All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD1111, database-driven web development class, I've been doing a series of video presentations based on the website of Mr. Flavio Copes, that being the Valley of Code. So this has just been a review. So what I'm going to be doing, I've done 5 videos so far where I went through his HTML handbook. Next, I'm going to do probably around 10 videos on the CSS handbook and probably around 10 more on the JavaScript. These are all meant to be review. Then I'm going to jump in and go over Node, his notebook. And plus, I think, and I've got an old copy of the Express notebook the one that he used to have. So I might go through that one also. We'll see. Then I'm going to go over his React one. All right, and that's just to get us in the mood, in the whatever you want to call it, for us to start working, both reviewing client-side JavaScript using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So client-side development, and then we'll get into server-side development with Node.js and React. All right, so that said, let me jump right into it, if you please. This is much longer, so the one I just finished going over is right here, the Valley of Code HTML Handbook, and it was 74 pages. Now I'm jumping into one that's 175 pages, so it's more than 100 pages more than the one I just finished. All right. Again, the goal is to get you up to speed quickly using CSS. I'm not going to run through any of the stuff that's in here. There's like 45, I think we counted, different sections in here. There will be no way in heck I can give in due diligence probably to everything that's in here. So there's going to be quite a bit that I'm going to talk about. And some probably which will be at least somewhat skipped. So as the author says here, I wrote this book to help you quickly learn CSS and get familiar with advanced CSS topics. CSS is an acronym that stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It's one of the 3 main building blocks of the World Wide Web, along with HTML or hypertext markup language that we just covered, and JavaScript or JS, which we'll cover next. All right. So again, you've got to realize this is Mr. Cope speaking here. I'm not saying I disagree with anything he says, but he says it's an amazing tool. In the last few years, it has grown a lot, adding such things as CSS Grid, Flexbox, and CSS custom properties. This book is aimed at whom? The beginner, because they start from basically ground zero with nothing. Also the professional, to talk about some of the new features and maybe some of the things that as a professional you may have skipped. All right. CSS has improved a lot in the past few years, and it's evolving quickly. So it says, in this book, I talk exclusively about styling HTML documents, but you can use CSS for other things as well. The only thing I've ever used it for is CSS documents. A CSS file contains several rules. Each rule is composed by 2 parts, the selector and the declaration block. And if you remember from what I had shown you earlier here, there's the selector, there's the declaration block. Selector, declaration block. Selectors, declaration block. So the selector can be the name of a control. I could put button there, I could put, whatever there, label, etc. Okay? Or it can be the name of a class here, which must be prefaced with a period, or the name of an ID here, which must be prefaced with a pound sign. That's normally most of what you're going to see here. All right? And again, we're going to keep going on. Now, what I had done when I went through this CSS document is I had gone through, and as I went through stuff, then I would go and comment stuff in and comment it out, etc. I showed a little bit of work using both an external style sheet that we just looked at, an internal style sheet with the style tags, all right, and even a little bit of inline CSS with a span. So I'm going to start by coming in here, and I'm going to uncomment this, and I'm going to add my comments, I guess, here. All right, now let's see. There's P. So I want to uncomment this. There we go. That's what I want. All right, now it's not going to show very much. And in fact, since I repeated the same thing in here twice, I can actually go and remove this. So let's see. We'll remove this and this. This comment is redundant. So again, I will come in here then and start adding my comments again. So what have I done? Just to show you, I have come back in here and what I have added. So what is in here now is this. Now that's really hard to see because that's white text. Let's go back and make the text black again. So you'll notice that the text is black here. It's like, well, then why is it white? Because I went in and I overrode that here. When we talk about cascading, the minormost type of CSS takes precedence over the majormost. So inline takes precedence over internal, which takes precedence over external. So for now, I'm just going to go and comment this line out. And once I do that and save, this should be black again when I go back here. And you'll notice that it is. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on a fairly long journey towards going back and reviewing a lot of the stuff that's in here for working with cascading style sheets. All right. All right. So just so you know, and I'm just going to show this to you right now, this is the URL for my YouTube playlist for this class. All right, so again, you only need to be concerned with the youtube.com, etc. But that's it right there. If you go out there right now, by the time any of you probably know about this, there'll be more videos out there than this. But these are the 5 videos. So I spent approximately what? 37, 68, 112, 146, almost 3 hours going back and reviewing Flavio Cope's first Valley of Code for the HTML handbook. My guess is this one that we're doing right now is probably going to be about double that. All right. So each CSS file contains rules. Each rule is composed of 2 parts, the selector and the declaration block. The selector is the string that identifies the elements on the page. The declaration block is how you basically want to style those elements. All right. So introduction to CSS. I believe that with Mr. Copes, and this is definitely no criticism of him, the guy seems to be he's an unbelievable person. I've never met him, but I very much appreciate the work he's done, in that all this work that he has done to create all these free files. But I don't know if English is his first language or not. Okay, so here's an example. Let's take a look at a couple of them here. Here, the P, or paragraph tag, we are putting something in there that says all paragraphs are to be 20 pixels. Now, I'm not going to work with pixels. I'm going to work with rems, and a rem is worth or the same as 16 pixels. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go into the CSS file, and for our paragraphs, we're going to come in there and we're going to add this. But I'm going to say, instead of 20 pixels, I'm going to say 1.25 rem. Not remx, just rem. And save. Now, I used to always be real much a stickler for this, that this had to be on its own line, etc. This stuff had to line up. I'm more going to this style of putting in my CSS now. Not that it's that big a thing one way or the other. All right, so if we jump back into here, okay, it may or may not have changed anything. And I don't care if it did or did not. All right. And like I said, I just want to continue on in here. So you can have multiple rules after one another, and that's typically what you have. All right. So you'll notice, I don't think that right now I've got any A tags, any anchor tags, but you can change all sorts of stuff. You can also target more than one item at a time. So this says I want all paragraph text and all anchor text to have a font size of 20 pixels. Now they mention here, more advanced selectors allow you to choose items whose attribute matches a specific value. We're going to look at some of that. I will tell you that this is speaking for me personally, probably not the rest of you, but for me, in that much of the stuff that you end up doing in here, all right, much of the stuff that you end up doing in here, I don't remember how to do it after a while, so I'm always kind of going back to look at it. One thing I did mention is if you do have a class that you set up in your CSS, it's with a period, and if you've got an ID, it's with a pound sign. Let's look at how those are used. So let's take a couple quick peeks at this. So I'm going to go back to here. And in this first paragraph that we've got right here, we're going to set up a class. So I'm going to say class equals, and I'm just going to call it para class. A stupid name, but you'll understand why in a minute. In the second one, I'm going to say ID equals para ID. All right, so why did I do that? Well, I'm going to jump back into here. And now I'm going to say that if I have a paragraph, and that paragraph has in it a class of para class, I think that's what I called it, we're going to make some changes to it. I think it was para class, so let's check. Para class and para ID, good. So para class, I'm going to say, what do we want? I'm going to put the, I'm going to just so you can see this, I'm going to set the background to white. And I'm going to set the color of the text to brown. And that is here. Oops. Well, let's do this. PRO. And that's A52A2A. All right, so we've got that. So what did that do? It's easiest to change something and then show you what's been changed. All right. Whoops. So we come back here and we take a look. And you notice I now have brown writing and a white background. All right, let's flip that. So let's say for the other one that we've got in here, for para ID, all right, now we're going to make the background brown, and we're going to make the color of the text white. All right. And, did I not save, or did I do something wrong? Para ID, color there. Call it Para ID, it looks like it. Oh, I think I know what it is. All right. I don't need to do this. P.para class, P.para ID. No. I want to say P. I can just say here dot para class, and this becomes # para ID. Let's go back and take a look at what we just did. All right. So we made this white background and brown text, and we made this a brown background and white text. Now, one of the things that hopefully you remember from doing this before is the difference between a class and an ID. Is that an ID, ideally at least, is only used once on a page. All right. Whereas, and let's go and move this out of here, and let's add it back over to here. All right. If I come through here and let's say, I don't know, I'm going to come in here. This is just going to look kind of weird, but just so you see it. So I'm going to say class equals para class. And I'm going to put this into every other one. So in other words, my odd ones here. All right. And again, I'll save, and again, I'll look at it. And look what I've changed. So again, the idea is when you work with classes, classes can be used multiple times on the same page, whereas an ID should only be used once on each page. All right, there are plenty of developers who never use IDs. They just use classes for everything. All right, so let's continue on. Semicolons are important here. Notice they're not optional except after the last rule. So, for instance, going back to what I just showed you, if we left the semicolon off here, notice we get this is underlined. And it's telling us we've got an error, a semicolon is expected. All right, if I leave it like this, now this para class, probably at least, is not going to work anywhere. See that? It's not working here, or here, or here, or here. And that's just for the simple reason that what we left off was the semicolon. As soon as we put that back in there, boom, everything's back again. All right? So bottom line is it's very easy to screw this stuff up. It says there's no fixed rule for formatting. This CSS is valid, but it's a pain to see. So they write, I don't even know if it's a pain to see, but the bottom line is this. You want to make sure that the way you set this up is you are standard. You do it in a standard way. I have said this type of thing before, and that is, even if you've got a bad standard that you are working under, it's typically at least better than having no standard at all. All right? All right. So it says, before going on, I want to give you a brief history of CSS. CSS has evolved. The latest CSS, I believe, was 3.3. I'm not sure exactly when that came out. It's probably in here someplace. It says level 2 was published in 1998. Since then, work began on level 3. We had to wait until 2002 for the first implementation of this. All right. And I should just mention, I'm not going to grab all that. I'm just going to grab this. That if you want a nice site to find out some stuff regarding CSS, that a really nice site for you to take a look at is css-tricks.com. They've just got a lot of really good stuff in there. There are some good blogs, as it says. There are videos in there. There are articles on all sorts of stuff. Another one that is good is, I think I'm telling you this right, CSSZengarden.com. I'm hoping that's correct. It is. All right. And what this is they have a lot of people who have come out and created Zen Garden and have done it using a lot of different CSS stylings. So you can work your way through here and say, oh, that looks really cool. I wonder how they did that. And you can go in and take a look at it. All right. And of course, there's the old fallbacks, W3 Schools, and the Mozilla Developer Network, etc. All right. So let's jump onto here. Adding CSS to an HTML page. Now, I've shown you this before, but I'm going to do it one more time, and that is this. You've got to look at it that there's basically there are 3 different ways to add CSS to a website. Number 1, as shown below, you can add an external CSS file to your website. This is often done if you are going to use the same styling on greater than one page. Note, to use this external style sheet, you must add a link tag to each HTML page that wants to use it. Okay, so that's number 1. And I like to refer to this, you may or may not agree, but I like to refer to this as basically site-wide CSS. That's just the way that I refer to it. All right, site-wide CSS. All right. The next one is if you add style tags to an existing HTML page, you are using internal. All right, CSS. So I'm going to call this page wide CSS. So with that note, even though it'll be a little repetitive here, but that's okay. To use internal CSS, you must add, no, what you must add is a style tag to the HTML page that wants to use it. All right, again, these are my comments here, and I would actually be better off grabbing this, cutting it. In fact, I'm just going to copy it, and coming up to the top here and just adding it in as a comment. Since I am changing, since this is no longer CSS, I've got to use the HTML comment style. All right. So again, there's 3 ways. I've shown you 2 of them. The other one, in fact, over here now, I can get rid of all of this stuff. Okay? Because that's just this. This is internal. So when I come in here, the other way to add this if you add a span tag with a style attribute to an existing HTML element, you are using inline CSS. Again, my comments, this is the way I am explaining it, be it good, bad, or indifferent. So to use inline CSS, all right, you must add a span tag with a style attribute to the HTML, not page, but element that wants to use it. Again, these are just my comments. All right, and I have shown you all of them. So this was an example of external CSS. And we're going to keep adding to this as we go on in here, okay? Notice I spelled index wrong. Isn't that interesting? This is the index file. So this is how we go and bring in external CSS. Right here. This is how we bring in the internal CSS right there. And that's how we brought in the inline CSS right there. All right, so you have been able to see all 3 of these. All right, sorry about that. Dropped my pen here and I'm just picking it up. Okay. So you use the link tag, as we already said. Link is establishing a relationship between this file and the CSS file in which it's added. All right. The relationship is it's a style sheet. This type equals text CSS. There's some disagreement over whether or not that is still required, still should be used. It's not required. And I believe it's the MIME type, which is something internet something. Stand for It is the multi-purpose internet mail extension. All right, so that's what you're saying in there. I believe that's a MIME type. All right. So again, instead of using the link tag, you can put it in there directly. This is not recommended except for what you call special cases or whatever, because if you're going to have multiple pages, all right, it's nice to be able to basically put them on the same thing. Now, I'm going to add something. This just kind of hit me right here. I'm going to come in here and do this. So I'm going to come back in here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name because index is the right name, not indx. So let's rename this as index. All right, now I'm going to grab every bit of this and I'm going to copy it. In fact, I'm not going to do that yet. Let's go to here, and at the top, at the beginning of our body here, let's come in here and let's add, I want to do this the right way. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a header section. And in there, I'm going to add a nav section. And in that nav section, I'm going to add an unordered list that's going to have 3 list items in it. It's going to have 1. So this is going to say a tag href equals index.html. We'll have this class equal current, and I'm going to put in here home. Remove this, there we go. All right, now I'm going to add this, copy this 3 times. This next one will be about, and I don't need a class equal current on this. This will say about. And finally, we're going to have one that says contact. Again, I don't need a special class for it. And it will say contact. Now, as of right now, this will look extremely ugly. You've been warned. All right, but when I take a look at it, it says cannot get index. File, save. Try that again. There we go. So we now have this. This is going to end up becoming our nav bar in a little bit. But the reason I'm doing this like this is I want to show you something. So I'm going to grab everything that's on this page. In fact, I'm going to change the title on this page to we'll say test site, and this will be home. Okay? All right, I'm going to leave it like that. Now, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to copy. I don't need this comment at the top. It won't hurt anything. So I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, let's add in here. Let's go in and add a new file. And this is untitled. So let's remove everything that's here. Select the language. All right, we'll just remove that. How's that? And I'm going to come in and do a file, new file, and this will be about.html. All right, so I've got my index. Where did it put my about.html? I don't know. There's my index. I'm going to put in about.html, and let's immediately just go in and also add contact.html. Okay? All right. Now I'm going to go into about here, and I just copied everything in. Okay? Now, I want to change my current class so that it's for the about class. I can leave my comment in there. It won't hurt anything. This will say about. And I'm going to literally, for right now at least, I'm going to remove everything other than the header that I just added. I'm going to remove virtually everything that's in the body. And I'm just going to put in an H1 tag. It's going to say this is the about page, just like that. All right. Now I'm going to do a Control-A, Control-C, and copy it again. And now go down to my contact page and paste that in here. Now, I do want to change my current class to contact, okay, and have this say this is the contact page. All right, let's see if what I just did worked or didn't work. So, this is my home page. There's my about. There's my contact. There's my about. There's my home. There's my contact. So you can see I now have a working website that has 3 pages in it, albeit the fact that the 2 that are in here virtually don't do much of anything. And let's see if I go back. All right, doesn't like something in here with contacts. So let's look. So this is contact. One too many. There we go. That should fix it. Let's see. Now I don't have this on the home page like I do in the other ones, so let's put that in there. All right. So I'm going to come back into here. Oops, here. And I'm going to go back, and where I've got this is my contact page or whatever, I'm going to go and add that to my home page. So now when I go back in and take a look, well, I got to change it to this is the home page, but so let's do that. So that's home, and it also has that reflected in the title, Test Site Home. Here's About, and that should say Test Site About, and it does. And here's Contact, and that should say Test Site Contact, not About. All right, so again, let's take a quick look. So this is the home page. This is the About page. This is the Contact page. We'll play with this later and pretty it up. I'm not worried about that right now. All right? In fact, we'll do that in just a bit. So let's see. We're at 38 minutes. All right. Why don't we start the next part of this lesson by doing that? So I'll pick it up there. And I'm right now using the style tag. I've shown you that. Using inline styles, I've shown you that. So we'll come back and we'll start up on this basic selectors. Be back with that in just a couple minutes.